Greetings, my acolyte. Welcome back to the. I see your city for knowledge has increased since you last visited. Very well. Today we are going to be exploring one of the most ethereal and enigmatic beings in all of Star, a being who only appeared in the 2002 novel The New Rebellion, Enemy Lines 2 Rebels Stand. An ancient being, a being who was born in fire and one of Emperor Palpatine's most trusted confidants. He had all humanity burned out of his brain. He was just a predator whose goal was to dominate. The art of lightsaber combat, of course, is one of the most intricate and special things about the Star Wars galaxy, with the lightsaber being one of, if not the undisputed, most popular and well-known iconic sci-fi weapon in all of movie history. Iraq's Marin, also known as Lord Nyax, took this to the extreme, while beings such as Darth Malgus, Queller, Darth Bane, Tulak Hord, Exar Kun, took lightsaber combat to the very pinnacle of what it was. Iraq's Marin didn't need decades of training. He didn't need study and immersion in the dark side of the Force, though he chose to do this anyway. Iraq's Marin was a pure beast, standing a hulking 3 meters tall with 8 lightsabers protruding from his heavy gargantuan armor. Nyax was a hulking, mindless beast more than a man. Born on 4BBY in Alderaan, you're about to learn the story of perhaps the greatest lightsaber duelist to ever have lived, without using any skill or experience at all. So, my friends, let us proceed into this ancient era and see how Iraq's Marin was able to best Grandmaster Luke Skywalker, the most powerful Jedi in history, in a lightsaber duel. Iraq's Marin was a human male hailing from the planet Alderaan, something that will greatly come to detest in his later years. Alderaan was a peaceful world, and Iraq's Marin was anything but peaceful. The son of Sarkev, Quest, and Roganda is Marin, and one of Emperor Palpatine's most trusted concubines. Due to his mother's position in the Empire, Iraq was rumored to be the Emperor's son, with Palpatine having a variety of lovers such as Sly Moore in Legends continuity, even going as far as to implant a portion of his DNA within Sly Moore in order to generate Force-sensitive offspring. And Roganda cultivated these rumors, raising her son as a possible heir to the throne of the Empire if Palpatine ever was to be overthrown, as he would be in 4ABY. Iraq was Force-sensitive and began to tutor and train in the dark side of the Force from an early age under the tutelage and watch of his mother and the Imperial Stylist Nastra Magrodi. When Iraq was 5 years old, Magrodi installed a subelectronic converter into his brain, allowing him to do something no other Force user in history has ever been able to do. Fool and perform mind tricks on droids. We can all remember this historic mind trick technique that Qui-Gon tried to employ on Watto, but due to Watto's Toydarian species being naturally immune to Force-sensitive mind tricks, he was unable to. Droids are an AI-generated software, and are largely considered to be invincible to mind tricks, and yet Iraq's Marin still found a way and wove his own path in order to be able to use this, being able to mind and control droids and computers through the Force itself, something that no one else has ever done. Midway through Iraq's training, Palpatine, the Emperor of the Galaxy, and when Iraq was 8 years old, was killed in 4ABY at the Battle of Endor by the redeemed Darth Vader, but the 8-year-old Iraq's Marin was not ready to stake a claim to the Empire, believing that his youth and the fact that he lacked of experience on the battlefield and the front lines would prove and allow him to be effortlessly dethroned by beings who believed he was inferior to them. His mother retreated with Iraq to their childhood home on Belsavis, the same location of beings such as Sel Makor and the Entity, as well as the World Razor, continuing Iraq's training and furthering his knowledge in the dark side of the Force, preparing him for a future bid and siege for the throne. In 12ABY, Iraq's mother had formulated a final plot and scheme to reunite the fractured Empire remnants and to place Iraq as the new Emperor. Iraq used his abilities to summon the ship known as the Eye of Palpatine, a gargantuan proportioned dreadnought abandoned in the Moonflower Nebula. The ship was to be a bargaining chip for financial backers from Senex Juvex, who would use the Eye of Palpatine as the centerpiece of an allied fleet that would help them rebuild the Empire and reforge the Imperial remnants into a great empire that would stand for another 10,000 years. However, when the dreadnought arrived above Belsavis, Iraq found that he could no longer control it. Iraq and his mother abandoned Belsavis, and the ship was destroyed by saboteurs from the new Jedi Order, led by the one, the only, Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. Iraq and his mother made their way to Coruscant, where they took up residence in a hidden laboratory. While there, Iraq was subject to a numerous amount of torturous growth hormones and cybernetic enhancements, with cybernetics even exceeding that of Darth Vader, greatly increasing his strength and formidability in hand-to-hand combat, very similar to beings like Malgus and Darth Bane, and causing him to grow to 3 meters in height, meaning he was gargantuan and far more formidable than any other Jedi or Sith would hope to be at the time, with the exception of perhaps both Darth Caedus and Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. Additionally, lightsabers were installed with emitters, emitting and jutting orange blades in his elbows, forearms, wrists, and knees. During this transformation, Iraq's mother recruited Lord Cronel to continue his training in the dark side of the Force. However, during one of these lessons, Iraq instigated a lightsaber duel with his teacher. He was able to be defeated by his teacher, but sustained a lightsaber thrust to the skull. Brain dead, Iraq was placed into suspended animation by his mother as she attempted to use cybernetic enhancements to repair him and allow her son to siege the throne once again. The damaged parts of Iraq's mind were replaced by computerized individuals and circuits, but his personal identity was completely gone. Desperate for her son to return to her, Reganda planned to install operational programming and memories into Iraq to bring him back from the brink. Before this could occur, however, a groundquake caused by the invasive Yuzong Vong conquest of Coruscant freed Iraq from his plane in stasis. With no knowledge of who he was or what had happened to him, he murdered his mother and escaped from the laboratory, seeking out a wellspring of Force energy nearby. The wellspring was protected by the ruins of the old Jedi Temple, and Iraq commanded legions of displaced refugees to help him break past the barrier in order to tap into the nexus of the Force and become unimaginably powerful. His minions, frightening of the imposing and monstrous form of Lord Nyax and incredible powers, dubbed him Lord Nyax, from the ancient Corellian legend about a dark spirit that parents told kids in order to make them eat their vegetables and to ensure that they went to bed on time. With no knowledge of his own past, Iraq took up the moniker for himself, claiming himself as a Dark Jedi. Iraq eventually broke into the Force Nexus, granting him greater control over the Force than ever before, and perhaps at this point, greater than anyone alive at the time, including Darth Krayt and Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. However, he was confronted by a task force led by Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. One of the Jedi in the task force, Tahiri Vila, used a variety of Yuzong Vong technology, unable to be sensed in the Force, due to the fact that Yuzong Vong were extraterrestrial and had been cut off from the Force millennia ago, to ambush Lord Nyax. Badly injured by thug buds, Iraq fell, using the last of his energy to propel a torrent of rubble and debris at his attackers. The effort imprinted Iraq's anger and frustration in the area where he had collapsed. Skywalker and the other Jedi sensed Nyax's death ripple through the Force, but later reports claimed he survived and escaped from the pit that he had forged. Iraq was a very talented and prodigious being in the Force, a prodigy with the dark side with abilities much greater than his age would suggest. He had a unique control over machines, granted by a subelectronic converter implanted in his brain that allowed him to use mind tricks on droids, successfully being able to convert ships and manipulate them to his will, meaning Iraq, if he had tapped into the full extent of his abilities, would have been able to control entire fleets and bend turbo lasers. However, his control was based on memorizing the schematics of the devices he was attempting to tap into. This resulted in a weakness to its ability. If the schematics changed even slightly, he could no longer manipulate the object. He was talented in telekinesis, able to choke individuals through the Force akin to Vader. He used it on Leia Organa Solo, all the while dueling her with a lightsaber simultaneously. Organa Solo barely managed to hold the choke on her own with her own strength in the Force, despite a midichlorian count far surpassing Nyax's. He had also influenced minds, being able to instill a sense of fatigue in his targets. He had a minor talent with the lightsaber, but wielded it poorly. In an unorthodox manner, instead of using a two-handed grip, he wielded it with one hand, in the fashion of an aristocratic dueler. As Lord Nyax, the training Iraq had accumulated was lost instantly, and he only had raw, uncontrolled power with a powerful midichlorian count. With his cybernetic and circuitry augmentations, he possessed enough immense physical strength, having been medically altered to grow well past the normal human size. 8 lightsabers were surgically implanted into his body along with subdermal armor pads, and he wielded them instinctively, slashing wildly at enemies, creating a field of orange light. His subelectronic converter had been modified to stimulate parts of his brain and grant him a greater mastery over the Force. His telekinetic prowess and power over minds increased dramatically as a result. Unable to speak and use verbal communication, he forced images into sentient brains to communicate. With this ability, he was able to compel individuals to work for him and enslave him, forcing him into the service against their will. His incredible power made him a beacon of Force dark side energy, easily notable by those with Force sensitivity. Grandmaster Luke Skywalker even eventually came to acknowledge Irek Ismarin, also known as Lord Nyax, as an equal, a being of comparable power to his own, at least at the time. This Luke Skywalker, however, was capable of fighting and defeating the most powerful variation of Emperor Palpatine just a few years prior in the event of Dark Empire. This same Palpatine could generate enormous vortices known as Force Storms and completely rip apart the fabric of the universe itself that could destroy fleets, planets, and over time the entire galaxy. Irek Ismarin was stated directly by Luke, which is a huge statement in itself, that when he tapped into the wellspring of the Force and Force Nexus underneath the Jedi Temple, he was capable of absolutely cracking the planet Coruscant in two. If he had just placed his two hands in the planet's crust, he would have been able to rip the very planet in two. This is a huge thing in Star Wars lore. Beings like Darth Nihilus, Emperor Vitiate, have both decimated entire worlds, with Vitiate using a death wave on both Nathema and Zyos using an ancient ritual, and Nihilus using his hunger in order to drain all Force energy from various worlds, including Qatar. However, Nyax was literally threatening to crack a planet in two, literally dividing the planet down the middle. This is absolutely unfathomable levels of power. This is my question for you before we continue. Do you think that Irek Ismarin was more powerful than Palpatine or Vitiate? Or do you think he is merely a weakling who could only do this due to the fact that Luke Skywalker was weakened at the time? Do you think that Irek Ismarin is one of the most powerful characters in Star Wars and deserves to be placed along the lines of beings such as Palpatine, Vitiate, and Grandmaster Luke Skywalker? Please leave your answers in the comments below. But now, let us continue. His desire for absolute dominance and power caused his abilities to be rooted in the dark side, affecting those that reached out to him with dark energy. After accessing the wellspring of the Force energy under the Jedi Temple, Irek's abilities were further amplified. He could use the Force to levitate and lift large columns of debris effortlessly. He was almost too powerful enough to convince the trained Jedi to answer his bidding and obey his commands. Upon his defeat, he projected his will and anger into the area around his dying body, guiding telekinetic attacks, despite succumbing to his injuries. Despite doing this, Nyax was able to survive, escaping from the pit he had fallen in. But there is one feat that I believe you have to turn on when concerning Lord Nyax. Darth Nyax came into conflict with Grandmaster Luke Skywalker, one of the most formidable Jedi and Force users in all of history, if not the undisputed most formidable. Nyax was able to hold his own against the Grandmaster, who at this time was inexperienced against Nyax, and had recently defeated the reborn Emperor Palpatine. Luke was able to hold his own against Nyax, but Nyax utterly obliterated him and another strike team of Jedi with his lightsabers, using AI-controlled lightsabers built into his suit in order to utterly spin, manipulate, and control his lightsabers, very similar to a chainsaw, using them and wildly slashing at them without any sense of direction. Nyax was nearly unstoppable, and would have been defeated if he had not fallen in the pit he had created. Well, my friends, what did you think of this breakdown about the most unique character in perhaps all of Star Wars history? The great master of the Force. Irek Ismarin was one of the most formidable beings in all of history, rivaling that of Exar Kun, Grandmaster Yoda, and even some have said Darth Sidious and Darth Vitiate, although this is not something I necessarily agree with. Well, my friends, this is where we part ways. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. And remember, the Force will be with you.